Captain Kyung-ho stood on the bridge of the Eternity's Edge, watching the stars bend around his ship. The massive warship moved through space like a ghost, its hull shimmering with temporal energy. After 3 years of testing, humanity had finally created the perfect weapon. "Status report," Kyung-ho called out to his crew. Chief Engineer Bo-ram looked up from her console. "Temporal core is running at 90%. All systems are green, Captain. We're ready for combat." Tactical Officer Dong-soo nodded from his station. "Enemy fleet detected. 12 Vextai destroyers approaching from the port side. They don't know we're here yet." The Vextai Empire had been humanity's enemy for 20 years. Their ships were fast and their weapons deadly. But they had never faced anything like the Eternity's Edge. The human warship existed in a constant state of temporal flux. Enemy weapons would pass right through it like it wasn't there. "Take us to battle stations," Kyung-ho ordered. Red lights flashed throughout the ship. 800 crew members rushed to their positions. The Eternity's Edge was the largest warship humanity had ever built. It carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Bo-ram's fingers danced over her controls. "Temporal displacement field is active. We're now existing 3 seconds ahead of normal time." The science was complicated, but the result was simple. The ship moved through time like a fish through water. Enemy attacks would hit empty space where they had been, not where they were now. "Enemy ships are firing," Dong-soo reported. On the main screen, bright beams of energy shot toward them. The crew watched as the deadly weapons passed harmlessly through their ship. Some crew members cheered. They were untouchable. "Return fire," Kyung-ho commanded. The Eternity's Edge unleashed its weapons. Massive energy cannons fired bursts of temporal-charged plasma. The beam struck the Vextai ships with devastating effect. 3 enemy destroyers exploded instantly. "Direct hits," Dong-soo said with satisfaction. 9 enemy ships remaining. The battle continued for 30 minutes. The Vextai threw everything they had at the human warship. Missiles, energy beams, and even suicide attacks. Nothing worked. The Eternity's Edge danced through time while its enemies could only shoot at shadows. One by one, the enemy ships fell. Soon only debris floated where the Vextai fleet had been. "Victory is ours," Kyung-ho announced. The crew erupted in cheers, but Bo-ram was frowning at her instruments. "Captain, I'm seeing some strange readings from the temporal core." "What kind of readings?" Kyung-ho asked. "Power fluctuations. The core temperature is rising faster than normal. It's like something is fighting back." Communications Officer Hae-won looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting temporal distortions around the ship. They're getting stronger." Kyung-ho felt a chill run down his spine. "Bo-ram, shut down the temporal field." "I'm trying, Captain." "The controls aren't responding." Suddenly, the ship shook violently. Sparks flew from control panels. The lights flickered. "What's happening?" Dong-soo shouted over the noise. Bo-ram's face was pale. "The temporal core is overloading. I can't control it anymore." The main screen showed something impossible. The space around their ship was twisting and bending. Reality itself seemed to be breaking apart. "Emergency shutdown," Kyung-ho ordered. "All hands brace for impact." Bo-ram slammed her fist on the emergency controls. Nothing happened. "It's not working, Captain." "The core won't shut down." The ship shook again, harder this time. Several crew members were thrown to the floor. Alarms blared throughout the vessel. "Hull breach on deck 7, came a voice over the intercom. "No, wait, the breach is gone." It was there, and then it wasn't. Kyung-ho grabbed his chair as the ship lurched. "Report." Science Officer Jin-woo was frantically checking his instruments. "Captain, we're not just moving through time anymore. We're becoming unstuck from it. The ship is existing at multiple temporal points simultaneously. In simple terms, Jin-woo, we're in the past, present, and future all at the same time. The temporal field isn't protecting us anymore. It's tearing us apart." Chief Medical Officer Sunmi's voice came through the intercom. "Medical Bay to bridge. I have crew members aging rapidly. Ensign Han Sol just grew gray hair in 30 seconds, and Private Yu Jin appears to be getting younger." Kyung-ho felt his heart sink. Their greatest weapon had become their worst nightmare. "Bo-ram, how long do we have?" "I don't know, Captain. The temporal distortions are spreading throughout the ship. At this rate, we'll be completely unstuck from normal time within hours." Navigator Yoonji looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Captain, sensors show we're no longer in normal space. We're drifting between timelines." The main screen displayed a view that hurt to look at. Space was fractured like a broken mirror. They could see multiple versions of themselves reflected in the temporal fragments. "Can we get back to our own timeline?" Kyung-ho asked. Unknown, Jinwoo replied. The temporal mathematics are beyond anything we've studied. We're in uncharted territory. Security Chief Tae-hyun's voice crackled over the comm system. Captain, I'm getting reports from all decks. Some sections of the ship are reverting to their construction blueprints. Others are showing signs of advanced decay. It's like different parts of the ship are experiencing different rates of time. Kyung-ho closed his eyes. 3 years of work, humanity's greatest achievement, and it had all gone wrong in minutes. Baram, can you stabilize what's left of our temporal field? I'm trying, Captain. But the technology was never designed for this. We're operating beyond all safety parameters. Do your best. HFY, send out a distress signal. To who, Captain? We're not even in normal space anymore. Kyung-ho looked around at his crew. They were scared, but they weren't giving up. They were still fighting. To anyone who might be listening, tell them what happened here. Warn them about temporal manipulation. As HFY worked on the distress signal, Baram continued her desperate attempts to regain control. The ship continued to shake and twist through impossible angles of time. Captain, Jinwoo said quietly, I'm detecting something approaching us. More Vextai ships? No, sir. These readings don't match any known vessels. They're coming from multiple directions through the temporal distortions. On the screen, dark shapes moved through the fractured space around them. They seemed to be made of solid time itself, flowing like liquid metal but holding their form. What are they? Dong-soo asked, his hand moving to his weapons controls. Unknown, Jinwoo replied. But Captain, they're not affected by the temporal distortions. They're moving through this chaos like it's normal space. Kyung-ho realized with growing dread that their problems were just beginning. They had broken the rules of time itself, and something was coming to collect the debt. The Eternity's Edge drifted helplessly through fractured time, its crew watching as mysterious ships closed in on them from all sides. The dark ships surrounded the Eternity's Edge like predators circling wounded prey. Communications Officer HFY stared at her instruments in disbelief. Captain, I'm receiving transmissions, she announced. But they're coming from the future. Captain Kyung-ho turned to face her. What do you mean? The timestamps on these messages show they were sent 500 years from now. And Captain, they're in Korean. The bridge fell silent except for the continuing alarms. HFY put the messages on the main screen. The text was clearly human, but the words made no sense. Warning to temporal vessel Eternity's Edge. Your experiments have created a cascade failure in the timeline. Humanity's future depends on your immediate surrender. That's impossible, Chief Engineer Baram said. How can our descendants know what we're doing? Science Officer Jinwoo looked up from his readings. Captain, temporal mechanics suggest that major timeline disruptions create ripples both forward and backward through time. Our actions here might have already affected the future. Another message appeared on screen. This one showed a human face aged and scarred. The person wore a uniform unlike anything they had seen before. This is Admiral Sang-wook of the Temporal Protection Agency, speaking from the year 2547. The vessel Eternity's Edge caused the great temporal war that nearly destroyed human civilization. You must stop your experiments immediately. Tactical Officer Dong-soo studied his sensors. Captain, those dark ships are taking position around us. I'm reading massive energy signatures from their weapon systems. Can we fight them? Kyung-ho asked, unknown. Their technology doesn't match anything in our databases. Chief Medical Officer Sun-mi's voice came through the intercom, filled with urgency. Captain, you need to see this. The temporal exposure is changing our crew at the genetic level. Kyung-ho left the bridge and rushed to the medical bay. What he found there horrified him. Crew members lay on medical tables, their bodies shifting and changing. Some appeared to be aging rapidly, while others seemed to be growing younger. What's happening to them? Kyung-ho asked. Sun-mi showed him a display of human DNA. The temporal energy is rewriting their genetic code. Their bodies are trying to exist at multiple ages simultaneously. I don't know how to stop it. Ensign Mi-young, who had been 25 that morning, now appeared to be in her 50s. She looked at her hands in confusion. Captain, I remember being older than this, but I also remember being a child. The memories are all mixed up. How many crew members are affected? Kyung-ho asked. All of them, sir. The entire crew is showing signs of temporal displacement. We're becoming unstuck from our own timeline. Back on the bridge, HFY was receiving more transmissions. Captain, the messages are getting more urgent. Our descendants are saying that the temporal cascade we started destroyed most of human space. Show me, Kyung-ho ordered. The main screen displayed images from the future. Cities floating in space, broken and abandoned. Planets with their surfaces cracked and twisted, fleets of ships drifting dead through the void. According to these messages, our temporal experiments tore holes in reality itself. The Vextai Empire wasn't destroyed by our weapons. They were consumed by temporal anomalies that spread across the galaxy. Navigator Yunji looked up from her station with fear in her eyes. Captain, if we caused all that destruction, what happens to us? Before Kyung-ho could answer, the dark ships began to move. They approached the Eternity's edge with smooth, flowing motions that defied physics. Incoming transmission from the approaching vessels, Haewon reported. The main screen changed to show beings that barely looked alive. They were tall and thin with skin that seemed to be made of flowing time itself. Their eyes held the weight of eternity. Temporal violators, the being spoke, its voice echoing across multiple timelines simultaneously. You have broken the fundamental laws of causality. Your existence threatens the stability of all realities. Dong-su raised his weapons. Captain, should I fire? Wait, Kyung-ho commanded. He stepped forward to address the strange beings. We didn't know this would happen. We were trying to defend humanity. Ignorance is not absolution, the being replied. You have made yourselves incompatible with normal space-time. You cannot return to your timeline without causing its destruction. Boram looked up from her engineering station. Captain, I'm detecting massive temporal distortions spreading outward from our position. We're like a disease in the timeline. The being on the screen continued. We are the Chronarch Enforcers. We exist outside normal time to maintain temporal stability. You must surrender your ship for immediate destruction. And our crew? Kyung-ho asked. The crew must be eliminated as well. You have all been contaminated by temporal energy. You can no longer exist in normal reality without causing further damage. Security Chief Taehyun's voice came over the intercom. Captain, I'm getting reports from all decks. The ship's structure is becoming unstable. Some corridors lead to the past, others to the future. Crew members are getting lost in their own vessel. Kyung-ho realized the full horror of their situation. They couldn't go home because they would destroy Earth. They couldn't exist where they were because they were breaking reality itself. And now beings from outside time wanted to eliminate them entirely. Boram, he called out, is there any way to reverse the temporal contamination? I don't think so, Captain. The changes to our molecular structure appear to be permanent. We're no longer fully human. The Chronarch Enforcer spoke again. You have 1 hour to consider our offer. Surrender willingly and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will scatter your atoms across infinite timelines where you will suffer forever. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Options? Kyung-ho asked his senior staff. We could try to fight, Dong-su suggested. Our weapons might work against them, and risk damaging more of space-time. Jin-woo shook his head. Captain, any use of our temporal weapons could make the situation worse. What about escape? Yoon-ji asked. Can we run? To where? Haewon replied. We don't belong in any timeline anymore. Kyung-ho studied the readings from around their ship. The temporal distortions were spreading like ripples in a pond. Every moment they existed, they caused more damage to reality. Sir, Boram said quietly, I'm detecting something else. There are other ships trapped in similar temporal distortions. We're not the only ones who made this mistake. On the sensor display, faint signals appeared. Dozens of vessels all caught between timelines, all victims of temporal experimentation. Haewon, can you contact them? Kyung-ho asked. I'll try, Captain. As she worked on establishing communications, Kyung-ho looked around at his crew. They were changing, becoming something beyond human. Their eyes held memories from multiple timelines. Their bodies existed at several ages simultaneously, but they were still his crew. They were still fighting. Captain, Haewon said with excitement. I'm getting a response. It's coming from a ship called the Kronos Defiant. They say they've been trapped here for over 1,000 years. Kyung-ho felt a spark of hope. Maybe they weren't alone. Maybe there was another way besides surrender or death. Open a channel, he ordered. The future of humanity might depend on what they learned from these other temporal exiles. The face that appeared on the main screen was alien, but the eyes held a familiar pain. The being had smooth, gray skin and large black eyes that seemed to contain the wisdom of centuries. Greetings, fellow temporal exiles, the alien captain said through the universal translator. I am Captain Veltar of the Kronos Defiant. We have been watching your arrival with great interest. Captain Kyung-ho stepped forward. Captain Veltar, I am Kyung-ho of the human vessel Eternity's Edge. Can you help us understand what's happening here? You have learned the hardest lesson in the universe, Veltar replied. Every species that achieves temporal manipulation faces the same choice. Most surrender their technology and accept death. Some fight and are scattered across infinite realities, but a few find a third path. Science Officer Jin Woo monitored his sensors as they spoke. Captain, I'm detecting massive temporal currents pulling us toward something. It looks like a storm made of pure time energy. Navigator Yunji confirmed his readings. The gravitational forces are unlike anything I've seen. It's pulling ships from multiple timelines into the same location. That is the temporal maelstrom, Veltar explained. It appears every few centuries when too many temporal experiments destabilize local spacetime. We have learned to use it as shelter from the Chronarch enforcers. Chief Engineer Bo-Ram studied the energy readings. Captain, if we enter that storm, we might never come out. Better than certain death, Tactical Officer Dong-Su commented. The Chronarch ships were still surrounding them, waiting for their decision. Their dark forms pulsed with temporal energy, ready to eliminate the Eternity's Edge if negotiations failed. Veltar, Kyung-ho said, you mentioned a third path. What did you mean? Follow us into the maelstrom, the alien captain replied. But be warned, once you enter, you can never return to normal space. You will become wanderers between worlds existing in the spaces between timelines. Communications Officer Hae-won picked up more signals. Captain, I'm detecting dozens of other ships in the storm. They're from different time periods and different species. All refugees from temporal experiments, Veltar confirmed. We are a fleet of the displaced, united by our shared exile. Chief Medical Officer Sunmi's voice came through the intercom. Captain, the temporal changes in our crew are accelerating. If we don't find stability soon, we'll lose our ability to interact with normal matter entirely. Kyung-ho made his decision. Veltar, we're going to follow you in. Bo-Ram, prepare the ship for entry into the temporal storm. Captain, are you sure about this? She asked. We don't have any other choice. As the Eternity's Edge began to move toward the maelstrom, the Chronarch ships reacted. They fired warning shots that passed through multiple timelines simultaneously. Temporal violators, halt your movement, came the cold voice of the Chronarch enforcer. Entry into the maelstrom is forbidden. They cannot follow us inside, Veltar transmitted. The Chronarch enforcers exist outside time, but the maelstrom exists between times. Even they cannot navigate its currents. The edge of the temporal storm looked like a wall of liquid starlight. Ships from dozens of different eras moved within its swirling depths. Kyung-ho saw vessels he recognized as human, but from timelines that looked nothing like his own. There, Veltar pointed to a massive derelict ship near the storm's center. That is the Prometheus ascending, from an alternate version of your Earth. They made the same choice your people did, but 500 years earlier. Dong-Su studied the dead ship through his tactical scanners. Captain, that vessel is definitely human, but the technology is far more advanced than ours. What happened to them? Kyung-ho asked. They chose to fight rather than accept exile, Veltar replied sadly. The temporal energies tore them apart from the inside. Their bodies could not adapt to existence between timelines. As they entered the maelstrom, the Eternity's Edge shook violently. The temporal currents grabbed the ship and pulled it deeper into the storm. Reality twisted around them like a kaleidoscope. Hull integrity holding, Bo-Ram reported, but I'm reading massive temporal pressure on all decks. Multiple timeline intersections detected, Jin Woo added. We're moving through dozens of different realities simultaneously. Through the swirling chaos, they could see other ships struggling against the temporal currents. Some were clearly alien, with designs that defied understanding. Others looked human but wrong, as if they came from worlds where history had taken different paths. Veltar, how do we survive in here? Kyung-ho asked. You must adapt or perish. The storm will test every molecule of your being. Those who can change will live. Those who cannot will join the derelicts. Security Chief Taehyun's voice came over the intercom. Captain, I need to report something strange. Some of our crew members are changing beyond recognition. Ensign Jaemin can now see through walls, and Lieutenant Sora appears to be aging backward. The temporal energies are evolving you, Veltar explained. Your species must learn to exist as beings of time rather than beings of space. As they moved deeper into the maelstrom, they approached the derelict human ship. Dong-Su organized a boarding party to investigate. Be careful, Kyung-ho warned. We don't know what we'll find over there. Dong-Su led a team of 6 crew members across to the Prometheus ascending. The boarding tunnel had to compensate for the fact that both ships were existing in different temporal states. Inside the derelict, they found something that chilled them to the bone. The crew was still there, but they had been transformed into beings of pure temporal energy. They moved like ghosts through the corridors, aware but unable to communicate. "Captain," Dongsu transmitted back. "The crew here chose to become one with time itself, rather than die. They exist, but they're not really alive anymore." In the ship's log, they found the final entry from the alternate Earth's captain. "We thought we could master time, but time mastered us instead. We have become something beyond human, but we have lost our humanity in the process. We are eternal, but we are alone. I pray that other versions of our people will find a better way." When the boarding party returned, the entire crew of the Eternity's Edge was shaken by what they had learned. "Is that our future?" Haywan asked quietly. "Not necessarily," Veltar transmitted. "Some species adapt better than others. Your people seem to be maintaining their consciousness better than most. What about you?" Kyung-ho asked. "How long have you been here?" "Over 1,000 years. My people learned to exist between timelines while keeping our sense of self. We became guardians of temporal stability, helping other refugees and preventing further temporal disasters." Boram looked up from her instruments. "Captain, I'm detecting something else. There are more human ships approaching through the storm. They're from our own timeline." On the main screen, they could see 3 human vessels struggling through the temporal currents. These ships looked familiar. They were the same class as vessels from Earth's defense fleet. They must have followed our temporal wake, Jinwoo realized. Our disappearance created a trail they could follow. "Captain," Haywan said with excitement, "I'm receiving a transmission from the lead ship. It's the UES Defiant, commanded by Captain Minho." Kyung-ho felt his heart race. Minho was his old friend from the academy. But if he had followed them here, it meant more humans were about to be trapped in this temporal nightmare. "Open a channel," he ordered. Minho's familiar face appeared on screen. "Kyung-ho, thank God you're alive. Earth sent us to find you." "Minho, you need to turn around immediately. This place is a temporal trap. We can't leave without you and your crew." "You don't understand," Kyung-ho said desperately. "We can never go home. We've been contaminated by temporal energy. If we return to Earth, we'll destroy our own timeline." But it was too late. The 3 rescue ships had already entered the maelstrom, and the temporal currents were pulling them deeper into the storm. Humanity's attempt to save the Eternity's Edge had just doomed 3 more ships to eternal exile. The 3 rescue ships tumbled through the temporal storm, their hulls sparking with temporal energy. Captain Kyung-ho watched helplessly as his old friend Minho struggled to control his vessel. "Minho, reduce power to all systems," Kyung-ho transmitted. "The temporal currents will tear your ship apart if you fight them." "Understood," came the reply. "But Kyung-ho, what is this place?" Navigator Yoonji had been studying the storm patterns. "Captain, we're drifting toward a stable zone. The temporal currents are weaker there." Science Officer Jinwoo confirmed her readings. "It appears to be a pocket of space where multiple timelines intersect without destroying each other. We might be able to rest there safely." Captain Veltar's alien vessel moved alongside them. "You have found the sanctuary," he transmitted. "It is the heart of the maelstrom, where exiled ships can exist without being torn apart by temporal forces." As the 4 human ships entered the stable zone, the chaotic swirling of the storm calmed to a gentle drift. Around them, dozens of alien vessels floated peacefully. Some were obviously ancient, their hulls covered with the strange growths that came from long exposure to temporal energy. "How many ships are here?" Chief Engineer Boram asked. 237, Veltar replied. "Representatives from species across the galaxy, all refugees from temporal experiments. Each one faced the same choice you now face." Captain Minho's ship, the UES Defiant, pulled alongside the Eternity's Edge. "Kyung-ho, we need to talk in person. Can you accommodate a meeting?" "Of course. Use Docking Bay 3. An hour later, the senior officers from all 4 human ships gathered in the Eternity's Edge conference room. Minho looked older than Kyung-ho remembered, and his uniform bore the insignia of an admiral. "The situation on Earth is not good," Minho began. "Your disappearance caused a panic. The government has banned all temporal research, but the Vextai have started developing their own time weapons. That's not our concern anymore," Tactical Officer Dong-Su said bitterly. "We can never go home." "That's not necessarily true," Minho replied. Our scientists think they've found a way to reverse the temporal contamination. Chief Medical Officer Sunmi shook her head. Admiral, I've been studying our crew for days. The changes are at the genetic level. We're no longer fully human. To prove her point, she gestured to Communications Officer Haewon, who had developed the ability to hear transmissions from across multiple timelines simultaneously. Her eyes now glowed with temporal energy. We've evolved beyond what we were, Haewon said, her voice carrying echoes from past and future. I can hear conversations from yesterday and tomorrow at the same time. Minho's chief science officer, Dr. Sung Hwan, studied the readings Sunmi provided. These genetic changes are extraordinary. You're becoming beings of pure temporal energy while maintaining your consciousness. Is that good or bad? Captain Minho asked. Unknown, Dr. Sung Hwan admitted, but they're certainly no longer compatible with normal space-time. Kyung-ho called for a vote among his crew. 800 people would decide not just their own fate, but potentially the fate of the rescue ships as well. We have 3 options, he announced over the ship's intercom. First, we can try to return to Earth and risk destroying our timeline. Second, we can surrender to the Chronarch enforcers and accept execution. Third, we can stay here and become permanent exiles. The voting took 6 hours. When it was complete, the results were clear. 712 crew members voted to stay in exile. Only 88 wanted to attempt return to Earth. The decision is made, Kyung-ho announced. We stay. But Minho wasn't ready to give up. What if we could find a way to use your new abilities to help humanity? Your crew has evolved to exist between timelines. Maybe that's not a curse, maybe it's a gift. Security Chief Tae-hyun had been unusually quiet during the discussions. Now he spoke up. Admiral, I've been experiencing visions of possible futures. In most of them, Earth is destroyed by temporal weapons within the next 50 years. What do you mean? Minho asked. The timeline is unstable, Tae-hyun explained. Our experiments have created weak points that others can exploit. I can see dozens of species developing temporal weapons. War is coming. Captain Veltar, who had been listening to the human discussions, finally spoke. Your security chief speaks the truth. We have observed this pattern many times. A species develops temporal technology, creates instability, and then others exploit that weakness. Usually, entire civilizations are destroyed. But there's another possibility, Veltar continued. Some of us have learned to repair the damage. We exist between timelines so we can see the weak points and fix them before they become critical. Boram looked up from her engineering station. Captain, I'm detecting massive temporal distortions forming near Earth's location in normal space. Something is trying to create a time weapon there. On the main display, they could see readings from their home system. Space itself was being torn apart by crude temporal manipulation. Someone was trying to build a time bomb that would destroy Earth's past, present, and future simultaneously. The Vextai, Minho said grimly. They must have reverse-engineered our technology. We have to stop them, Dongsu declared. How? Kyung-ho asked. We can't leave this sanctuary. Actually, you can, Veltar said. Your crew has adapted well to temporal existence. With training, you could learn to move between timelines at will. You could become temporal guardians like us. The idea was both terrifying and hopeful. They could never be human again, but they could still protect humanity. What would that mean exactly? Kyung-ho asked. You would give up your physical forms and become beings of pure temporal energy, Veltar explained. You would exist everywhere and nowhere, able to appear wherever temporal stability is threatened. And the cost? Sunmi asked. You would be eternal but alone. You could interact with normal matter only briefly. You would watch civilizations rise and fall across millions of years. Some of my people have gone mad from the loneliness. The conference room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They were being offered the chance to become gods of time itself, but at the cost of everything that made them human. There's something else, Haewon said softly. I've been receiving messages from Earth's future again. If we don't act, humanity will be extinct within a century. She played the transmissions on the room's speakers. They heard the voices of their descendants pleading for help across the centuries. The temporal wars have begun, came one desperate message. Earth's timeline is fracturing. We need the Guardians to save us. Kyung-ho looked around at his officers. They had been transformed by their exposure to temporal energy, but their sense of duty remained unchanged. If we do this, he said slowly, we can never see our families again. We'll become something beyond human understanding. But we'll save humanity, Boram replied. Isn't that worth any sacrifice? Minho stood up from the conference table. My ships will return to Earth and report that you died heroically in battle. Your families will remember you as heroes, not as the monsters you're afraid you've become. We're not monsters, Taehyun said firmly. We're humanity's children, even if we're no longer human ourselves. The decision was made. The crew of the Eternity's Edge would undergo the final transformation and become guardians of the timeline. They would protect reality itself from those who would abuse temporal power, but first they had to stop the Vextai from destroying Earth. 5 years had passed in the sanctuary. Though time meant little to the crew of the Eternity's Edge now, Captain Kyung-ho stood on the bridge, watching his transformed crew work with abilities that defied understanding. Communications Officer Hai-Wan could hear conversations across multiple timelines. Science Officer Jin-Woo could predict temporal fractures days before they formed. Navigator Yunji could plot courses through dimensions that had no names. They had become the guardians Captain Veltar described. When temporal weapons threatened innocent worlds, they appeared like ghosts to stop them. When timeline fractures threatened to tear reality apart, they repaired them with their bare hands. Captain, Jin-Woo reported, I'm detecting a massive temporal disturbance. Someone is building a weapon that could unravel causality itself. Location? Kyung-ho asked. The 30th century near the galactic core. The energy signature suggests they're trying to erase the concept of time from reality. This was their most dangerous mission yet. A weapon that could destroy time itself would end not just humanity, but every form of life that had ever existed or ever could exist. Boram, prepare for temporal jump, Kyung-ho ordered. Chief Engineer Boram, now more energy than matter, began the process of moving their ship through the timeline. The Eternity's Edge had been transformed too. It existed as a living vessel made of crystallized time, able to travel to any moment in history. They emerged in the 30th century to find a war zone. Thousands of ships from dozens of species battled around a massive space station. At the station's core, a device was being constructed that made their old temporal weapons look like toys. Captain, Tactical Officer Dong-Soo announced, the weapon is already active. It's erasing moments from history. Entire battles are disappearing as if they never happened. Through their enhanced senses, they could perceive the damage being done to reality. Whole sections of the timeline were being cut away like diseased tissue. If the weapon reached full power, it would create a cascade effect that would unravel everything that had ever been. Take us in, Kyung-ho commanded. The Eternity's Edge moved through the battle like a ghost ship. Energy weapons passed harmlessly through its temporal hull. They had become something beyond physical matter, existing in the spaces between seconds. But as they approached the weapon, something unexpected happened. Security Chief Taehyun suddenly screamed and collapsed. What's wrong with him? Chief Medical Officer Sunmi asked, rushing to his side. I'm trapped, Taehyun gasped. The weapon? It's creating temporal loops. I'm living the same moment over and over again. Kyung-ho realized what was happening. Taehyun had become caught in a temporal paradox created by the weapon. To prevent the cascade from spreading, he was sacrificing himself by absorbing the loop into his own timeline. Is there anything we can do? Kyung-ho asked. No, Sunmi replied sadly. If we break him out of the loop, the paradox will spread to the rest of reality. Taehyun looked up at his captain with eyes that held the pain of living the same terrible moment for eternity. Stop the weapon, Captain. Don't let my sacrifice be meaningless. They left their friend trapped in his eternal loop and continued toward the space station. The weapon was almost complete. Its builders were a species they didn't recognize, beings of pure energy who seemed to exist outside normal space-time. They're like us, Haewon realized. They're temporal exiles too. But they've chosen to destroy rather than protect, Dong-Soo replied grimly. The battle to stop the weapon took 3 days. The Eternity's Edge fought alongside ships from across time itself. Other temporal guardian vessels appeared to help, some carrying crews from species that had been extinct for millions of years. In the end, they succeeded. The weapon was destroyed and the temporal cascade stopped. But the cost was high. 7 guardian ships had been lost, their crews scattered across infinite timelines. Mission accomplished, Kyung-ho reported to the other guardians. Causality is stable, but their work was not done. As they prepared to return to the sanctuary, Jin-Woo detected another temporal anomaly. Captain, there's a new disturbance. It's coming from our own timeline. On the main screen, they could see Earth in the 25th century. A human ship was approaching the planet and its energy signature was familiar. That's impossible, Boram said. That ship is using our temporal technology. They had prevented the Vextai from developing time weapons, but humanity had eventually rediscovered the same dangerous science. The cycle was starting over again. Captain, Haywan announced, I'm receiving a transmission from the approaching ship. They're asking for our surrender. Kyung-ho smiled sadly. They had become the Chronarch enforcers they once fled from. They were the ones who now had to make other temporal experimenters choose between death and exile. Open a channel, he ordered. The face that appeared on screen was young and determined, just as Kyung-ho had been years ago. The human captain wore a uniform bearing Earth's symbol, and his eyes held the same confidence that had once driven the Eternity's Edge into disaster. Unknown vessel, the young captain said. You are interfering with Earth Defense Force operations. Identify yourself. I am Captain Kyung-ho of the temporal guardian vessel Eternity's Edge, he replied. You are conducting illegal experiments with temporal technology. You must cease immediately. We're trying to protect Earth from alien invasion, the captain replied. Our temporal weapons are humanity's only hope. The irony was not lost on Kyung-ho. Every species thought they were the heroes of their own story. Every temporal experiment was justified by noble goals. But the result was always the same. Captain, what is your name? Kyung-ho asked. Captain Il-sung of the UES Temporal Strike. Captain Il-sung, your experiments will create a cascade failure that will destroy Earth's timeline. You must surrender your ship for immediate destruction. Never, Il-sung replied. We won't surrender to aliens. We're not aliens, Kyung-ho said sadly. We're your descendants. We're what humanity becomes when it tries to master time itself. To prove his point, he transmitted the history of the Eternity's Edge. He showed Il-sung the battle with the Vextai, the temporal contamination, the exile in the sanctuary, and the long years as guardians of reality. This is what awaits you, Kyung-ho explained. You will save humanity by giving up your humanity. You will become eternal by accepting eternal loneliness. Captain Il-sung studied the transmission in silence. His crew gathered around him, their faces showing the same fear and confusion that had once filled the bridge of the Eternity's Edge. What if we refuse? Il-sung asked. Then we will do what we must to protect the timeline, Kyung-ho replied. We will destroy your ship and scatter your atoms across infinite realities. And if we surrender? You will join us. You will become guardians like us, protecting reality from those who would abuse temporal power. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the Eternity's Edge in silence. They waited as Captain Il-sung made the same impossible choice they had faced years ago. Captain, Boram said quietly, what do you think he'll choose? The same thing we did, Kyung-ho replied. He'll choose duty over comfort, purpose over safety. He'll choose to become something more than human to protect what humanity represents. The response came an hour later. Guardian Vessel Eternity's Edge, this is Captain Il-sung. We accept exile. We accept transformation. We accept our duty as guardians of time. Kyung-ho felt a mixture of sadness and pride. Another ship, another crew, would join their endless patrol, but humanity would be safe for another generation. Welcome to eternity, Captain Il-sung, he transmitted. Your watch begins now. As the UES temporal strike followed them into the temporal maelstrom, Kyung-ho made his final log entry. We sought to master time, only to discover that time mastered us. We are no longer human, but we are still humanity's children. We guard the timeline not because we chose to, but because we must. This is our burden, our purpose, our eternity. To those who come after us, remember that the greatest power requires the greatest sacrifice. We gave up our humanity so that humanity could survive. We became monsters so that our people could remain innocent. The watch continues. The timeline endures. And somewhere in the spaces between seconds, we stand guard against the darkness that would unmake all of creation. This is Captain Kyung-ho of the Eternity's Edge, signing off, until the end of time itself. The temporal guardian vessel disappeared into the swirling currents of the maelstrom, carrying its crew of transformed humans toward their next mission. Behind them, Earth spun peacefully in its orbit, protected by guardians its people would never know existed. The cycle continued, as it always had, as it always would. Humanity reached for godhood, found the price too high, and chose to pay it anyway. And in the spaces between heartbeats, between thoughts, between moments, the Guardians watched and waited and protected the timeline that had given birth to them. Time flowed on, and the Eternity's Edge flowed with it forever.